Have you noticed that the most powerful victories often happen without a single blow being struck? Think about the arguments you never had to finish because the other person backed down first, or the rivalries that died out before they even began. Winning without fighting feels almost unfair, like you've taken control of the board before the game even started. Yet, most people rush into conflict, wasting energy proving themselves. Machiavelli revealed the deeper truth. The strongest leaders don't win by crushing their enemies. They win by making the fight unnecessary. He never swung the sword, and yet he conquered. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Florentine mind who wrote The Prince, knew that true mastery is not found in brute force. Any thug can swing a blade. Any tyrant can raise an army. But to win without fighting? That is the coldest, cleverest, most enduring strategy of all. Violence makes noise. But silence? Silence rearranges the room. The trick Machiavelli teaches is that most battles are lost before the first clash of steel. They are lost in whispers, in hesitation, in appearances. They are lost in the theater of perception, where power is shaped not by what you do, but by what they think you will do. The man who must fight has already surrendered his subtlety. The man who wins without a strike holds eternity in his hands. Imagine a rival prince, bristling with soldiers, eager to make war. He shouts threats, boasts of armies, rattles sabers. The streets buzz with fear. But the wise ruler, the Machiavellian strategist, does not take the bait. He does not rush to the battlefield. He does not defend his pride with clashing steel. Instead, he waits, calculates, and pulls the strings unseen. Whispers spread through the rival's court. His allies may not be loyal. His generals may be plotting. His treasury may be thin. The rival looks over his shoulder and finds shadows where he once saw loyalty. No battle has begun, and yet the war is already lost. This is Machiavelli's hidden law. The appearance of power is more decisive than the use of power. A ruler who masters perception rules the battlefield without stepping foot upon it. History remembers the generals who won wars, but history reveres the rulers who never had to fight them at all. Consider Lorenzo de Medici, to whom Machiavelli dedicated The Prince. Florence was a city trembling between foreign powers, torn by factions, ripe for conquest. Yet Lorenzo's family endured for generations not because they commanded the strongest armies, but because they commanded perception. They made enemies think twice. They made allies feel chosen. They made citizens believe stability was safer than rebellion. No sword could achieve that. Only strategy could. Machiavelli wrote with brutal clarity, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But note the subtlety. Fear does not always require blood. Fear can be planted, watered, and grown in silence. The ruler who whispers uncertainty into the minds of his rivals has already stolen half their strength. The rival wastes energy watching shadows, doubting friends, questioning motives. This is how wars are won before they begin. Think of it like chess. The amateur rushes pieces forward, eager for action, eager for capture. But the master waits. He holds. He makes the opponent second-guess every move. By the time the first pawn falls, the game is already decided. Machiavelli's ruler is the chess master. He makes the rival fight ghosts. He makes them question themselves until retreat feels like the only victory. The man who conquers armies is impressive. The man who conquers minds is eternal. But here is the brutal paradox. To win without fighting, you must first build a life that radiates power even in silence. You cannot bluff forever. You cannot conjure influence from nothing. Machiavelli warns, never appear weak. If you lack resources, disguise it. If you lack soldiers, mask it with theater. If you lack certainty, cloak it in ritual. Because once perception collapses, war becomes inevitable and you will not survive it. Winning without fighting requires substance beneath the shadow. The silence must be filled with presence. Now watch how this unfolds in real life. In the boardroom, two rivals clash over a deal. One storms in with numbers, slides, noise. The other listens, pauses, waits. When he speaks, he says only enough to seed doubt. Are you certain your backers will hold through the quarter? The room turns. The rival scrambles to defend. Suddenly, the noise becomes confession. The man who said less controls more. This is Machiavelli reborn in business suits. The one who holds perception wins the deal. In relationships, the same law operates. The desperate one, the one who explains, argues, begs, always loses. The silent one, the one who makes absence heavy, always controls the frame. Machiavelli would laugh at our age of oversharing. Every explanation, every plea, every defense is an offering of weakness. He would remind us, the prince who explains himself too much ceases to look like a prince. To win without fighting, you must dare the void. You must hold your silence longer than your rival can hold his nerve. This is why most people fail. They cannot endure ambiguity. They cannot sit in the dark without filling it with words. They panic at the thought of being misunderstood. They rush to correct the record, to prove their innocence, to beg for clarity. And in doing so, they destroy themselves. Machiavelli would smile, because the moment you start defending yourself, you are no longer feared. You are already on trial. The ruler who holds silence forces others to fill it with their own fears. And those fears are sharper than swords. Consider again Cesare Borgia, Machiavelli's dark idol. Cesare rarely explained himself. He let silence and rumor spread his legend. When he struck, it was sudden, decisive, and cruel. But most of the time, he did not need to strike. His enemies collapsed beneath the weight of their imagination. This is why Machiavelli held him as the model prince. Not because he always fought, but because he so often did not need to. Borgia won with silence. Borgia won with shadow. Borgia won with perception. We live in an age obsessed with visibility. Everyone wants to be seen, to speak, to defend, to argue. But Machiavelli whispers across 5 centuries, do less. Appear more. Your reputation is a mask. Your silence is the stage. Your rivals will script their own downfall while you sit in the shadows. This is the coldest law of power. But let us go deeper. Why does this work? Why does silence, restraint, perception carry more weight than weapons? Because human beings are ruled not by reality, but by imagination. The battlefield of power is the battlefield of fear. A visible threat can be measured, counted, confronted, but an invisible threat cannot. The rival who imagines your strength gives you more power than you could ever seize by force. The rival who imagines your silence as calculation gives you more authority than 1,000 speeches. This is the Machiavellian trick. The shadow you cast is more important than the sword you carry. And here is the cost. You must live with restraint. You must master yourself before you master the room. The impatient ruler rushes to speak, to fight, to prove. The Machiavellian ruler withholds. He waits until the silence grows unbearable. He makes the enemy destroy himself. This is not weakness. This is war. But it is war waged without fighting. Look at the modern world and you will see this truth everywhere. The negotiator who lets the other side reveal their desperation in silence. The politician who withholds statements until rumor builds a myth around him. The lover who withholds presence until desire multiplies. They all use Machiavelli's law. They all win without fighting. And so can you. But beware. This is a dangerous strategy. If silence is used without substance, it collapses. If restraint is used without strength, it becomes humiliation. Machiavelli warns, never be mistaken for weak. The silence must carry the weight of unspoken strength. The absence must feel heavier than presence. Otherwise, the mask cracks and the rival seizes the advantage. This is why winning without fighting is the rarest mastery. It requires strength hidden beneath shadow. It requires control of self greater than control of others. The prince who holds silence is the prince who owns time itself. And here is the brutal truth. Most will never master this. Most will always rush to fight. Most will always confuse noise for power. But those who do master it, those who can win without raising their hand, without speaking their defense, without fighting the obvious fight, will rule longer than armies and louder than speeches. Because silence is not weakness. Silence is not retreat. Silence is not absence. Silence is the strategy of kings. And Machiavelli's cold whisper echoes, the man who wins without fighting never truly loses. So, what does it take, truly, to win without fighting? Machiavelli would tell you it begins not on the battlefield, not in the council chamber, not even in the courts of power. It begins inside the prince, inside the strategist, inside the human being who dares to master his own need for relief. Because most people fight to relieve pressure. They swing the sword not because it is necessary, but because they cannot bear the weight of uncertainty. They cannot stand being doubted. They cannot endure the silence. So they break it with violence. But the ruler who endures silence commands not just others, he commands himself. Self-mastery is the hidden battlefield of Machiavelli's law. The impatient king loses his crown. The insecure general bleeds his army dry. The defensive prince confesses his weakness before the first question is even asked. But the one who can hold the line within himself becomes immovable. This is why restraint is the most dangerous weapon, because it appears as nothing, while in reality it is everything. Think of an interrogation. The guilty man speaks too much. He rushes to explain, to justify, to drown the silence with words. The innocent man? He can endure the pause. He does not need to fill the void. His stillness becomes his shield. Machiavelli knew this. The guilty reveal themselves by their fear of silence. Now apply this to power. The rival who fears silence exposes every weakness. The ruler who holds silence forces the rival to fight himself. Thus the greatest battle is always internal, not between armies, but between nerves. And nerves are contagious. The moment a ruler shows desperation, it spreads like plague. His soldiers doubt. His allies hesitate. His rivals strike. But the moment a ruler shows calm, even if it is feigned, it too spreads. His soldiers feel steadied. His allies cling closer. His rivals hesitate. This is why Machiavelli insisted, appearances are stronger than truth. A prince who appears calm is calm, even if his heart is burning. A prince who appears strong is strong, even if his coffers are empty. The theater of perception becomes the truth of politics. So how do you master perception? You master silence. You master restraint. You master ambiguity. The less you reveal, the more others reveal themselves. The less you confess, the more others confess to you. The less you fight, the more others fight shadows of their own imagination. This is the paradox. The weaker you appear in noise, the stronger you become in silence. Look again at Cesare Borgia. He did not always crush enemies with violence. He often let them destroy each other while he waited in the shadows. He fed rumor, let allies turn rivals, and only struck once the battlefield was already cleared for him. This is why Machiavelli idolized him, not for his sword, but for his patience. Not for his armies, but for his theater. Borgia ruled perception, and perception ruled reality. In the modern world, the same law holds. The CEO who never rushes to defend himself against market rumors often survives them. The politician who does not address every accusation often appears stronger than the one who shouts denials. The partner who does not argue every insult often holds the frame in the relationship. They win not by force, but by absence. Not by noise, but by shadow. This is Machiavelli's lesson. Presence is not always strength. Sometimes absence is stronger. But here lies the razor edge. Silence can be a trap for the one who wields it. If your silence masks nothing, it will collapse. If you are empty inside, silence will reveal the void. If you are afraid, silence will not conceal it, it will amplify it. So Machiavelli warns, build substance before you build silence. Train strength before you train absence. A hollow man cannot win without fighting, because the silence will expose him. The silent prince must be filled with weight, with substance, with aura. Otherwise silence becomes humiliation, not power. Now imagine the scene. A council of rivals gathers. They accuse, they speculate, they demand. One prince leaps to defend, spitting excuses, handing them the rope of his own downfall. Another prince says nothing. He watches. He waits. His silence becomes unbearable. And soon, the council begins to argue among themselves. They accuse one another. They panic in the vacuum. The silent prince never raised his voice, never swung his sword. And yet, when the dust settles, he stands victorious. This is winning without fighting. This is the Machiavellian art. And the art extends beyond politics. In negotiation, the one who waits wins. In conflict, the one who listens longer wins. In love, the one who controls absence wins. In leadership, the one who resists the urge to over-explain wins. Because in every field, silence makes others expose themselves. And the exposure of others is the ultimate victory. Machiavelli would say this, every battle is a mirror. The man who cannot face his own reflection loses. The man who can face it and force others to face theirs wins without a strike. So when he counsels rulers, his advice is brutal but clear. Do not waste your sword where silence can do the work. Do not waste your strength where perception can do the work. Do not waste your words where absence can do the work. The ruler who learns this lives longer. The rival who does not dies faster. But let us turn to the final paradox. To win without fighting, you must sometimes appear ready to fight. If you are never feared, your silence is interpreted as weakness. If you never strike, your restraint is dismissed as cowardice. Machiavelli insists, A prince must be both fox and lion. He must wield both shadow and force. So the law is balance, strike rarely. But when you strike, strike so hard they never forget. This makes your silence heavier, your absence darker, your restraint more terrifying. For silence without the possibility of violence is emptiness. But silence backed by violence is the gravest power of all. Now picture the closing lesson. A ruler steps onto the balcony. The crowd shouts accusations, demands answers. He does not defend himself. He does not explain. He simply stands, eyes steady, mouth shut. Minutes pass. The crowd falters. The noise withers. Whispers begin. What is he thinking? What does he know? What will he do? The silence becomes unbearable. And then he turns and walks away. The crowd, once full of rage, is now full of fear. He never fought. And yet he won. This is Machiavelli's strategy. The coldest, hardest law of all. To win without fighting. To conquer without swinging the sword. To dominate without raising your voice. And when your enemies collapse under the weight of their own fear, you will know the truth Machiavelli carved into history. The greatest power is not to strike. The greatest power is to never need to.